Hello. Welcome to Global Eye. Not just what you need to know, but what you want to know. I'm Ellie Hockenberg, and together we're going to take a wider and deeper look into the world we live in. So let's see what we have on tonight's show. Let's go. Who's on board? Trump's Board of Peace, bold new world realpolitik, or the funeral for the post-World War II order? Friendship tax included. Trump threatens 100% tariffs on Canada. Trader Joe or Trader War? No more pandas for you. Tokyo saying ciao ciao to xiao xiao. End of panda diplomacy. And sharks are hungry. We are on the menu. 4 bites in 2 days. In Australia, are we victims of the jaws or of our own illusion that the ocean never belonged to us? All right, so before we get to all of this and so much more, we're eyeing the globe's biggest stories. Hot as ice. For the second time in a month, a fatal shooting involving federal agents triggering national outrage. 37-year-old CU nurse Alex Pretty ends up face down under a pile of Border Patrol officers. DHS says he had a gun. The videos don't show one.
Donald Trump, I call on you once again. Remove this force from Minnesota. They are sowing chaos and violence. We've seen deadly violence from federal agents again and again and again.
The incident comes just 2 weeks after the fatal shooting of Renee Nicole Good by an immigration agent walking on thin ice between self-defense and out of control. The U.S. blows up a boat. Again, far from shore in the Eastern Pacific, a small vessel cuts through the waves, then disappears in a fireball. The U.S. military says it was a narco-trafficking boat. 2 killed, 1 survivor in the water. Just the latest in a string of strikes that began before the raid that grabbed Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. Trump says he's, quote, virtually stopped 100% of drugs. So who's high and who's counting? Trump versus NATO. The walkback after insulting NATO troops. Trump's doing damage control. The backlash was instant, from Downing Streets to veterans who bled in Helmand.
Let me start by paying tribute to the 457 of our armed services who lost their lives in Afghanistan. I will never forget their courage, their bravery, and the sacrifice that they made for their country. There are many also who were injured, some with life-changing injuries. And so I consider President Trump's remarks to be insulting and frankly appalling.
So after a phone call with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Trump posts that UK troops were among the greatest of all warriors. Not an apology, but it's the intention that counts, right? The one party getting even more singular. The Chinese purge strikes again in Beijing's power pyramid. General Zhang sat right next to Xi Jinping. Now, China's defense ministry says he's under investigation for, quote, grave violations. That phrase that usually means corruption and exile from the inner circle. So 7-member command now down to 2. Xi and Xi's gut. All right. Mud, rain, and loss in Java, in West Indonesia. Days of pounding rain turned a hillside into a wave of earth. The landslide roared through villages while most people slept, burying homes, killing at least 7, leaving more than 80 missing. Rescuers pick through mud and shattered roofs as fresh warnings go out for more floods and landslide across the region, making the rescue even more challenging. And from one to another, a campground tragedy in New Zealand. What started as a summer holiday by the sea ended under a wall of mud. A landslide crashed into a packed camping area at Mount Maunganui. 6 people now presumed dead, including 2 teenagers. And there it is even more challenging. The crews found human remains, then discovered new ground cracks and had to pull back. Families still wait on the shoreline while police decide when it's safe to go in again. So nature's not giving them a break either. All right, TikTok's American makeover. For a few hours, TikTok went dark in the U.S., then came back with a new feature, or rather, a new future. Under pressure from a looming ban, the app cuts a deal, a U.S. joint venture with Oracle and big investors, new data rules, and its famous algorithm retrained on American soil.
This deal brings a lot of uncertainty. Even for people who may be celebrating the transfer of ownership, there may be a lot of questions about what could change on the platform. So we might liken this to the changing of ownership for Twitter, now X, with Elon Musk taking ownership of that.
Yeah, so it's the same icon, app icon on your phone, but very, very different politics behind it. Not just for you. The For You page is how you got it. Well, Saudi's winter wonderland, frozen, quite literally. Saudi Arabia promised a ski resort in the middle of the desert and Asian Winter Games to go with it. Now the 2029 Games are postponed to an unnamed future date, replaced with smaller events and big questions. With the oil prices sliding and critics blessing the environmental cost, the kingdom's mega event calendar may be colliding with reality. Some would say that it is as ambitious as snow in the desert. Free solo on a skyscraper. Yes, a strip of glass and steel, 508 meters into the sky, and one man climbing it with his bare hands. American climber Alex Honnold scales Taipei one-on-one without ropes, other than all the cables surrounding him, broadcasting it live on Netflix.
You know, I first saw Taipei 101 over 10 years ago and was like, wow, that's incredible for climbing. That would be amazing. But at the time, didn't get the opportunity to actually climb it. And you know, at the time, I thought about climbing it without permission. You know, don't tell anybody. You know, but I was kind of like, oh, I know I can do it, and it would be amazing. Like, maybe I should.
Well, 1 hour, 31 minutes later, he topped out and called it sick. And this is absolutely what I feel about it. Sick to my stomach. Can you think about being so high? Well, all right, from one summit to another, because it is time to convene our summit. Let's go. So tonight we are delighted to welcome from Austin, Texas, Ambassador Edmund Fitton Brown, the Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, former British Ambassador to Yemen. From Florida, Dr. Eric Mandel, Founder and Director of the Middle East Political Information Network, and from London, ex-diplomat, geopolitical expert, podcaster, Peter Curzon. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much for joining us tonight, because we want to ask who's on board. Trump's board of peace, bold new world realpolitik, or simply the funeral of post-World War II global order? Before we discuss, let's take a closer look.
For nearly 80 years, the United Nations has been the backbone of global diplomacy, but today its relevance is under intense debate. Supporters argue the UN still matters. It delivers humanitarian aid, coordinates global health responses, and provides a rare forum where rivals talk instead of fight. Even critics admit, without it, many crises would likely be worse. But critics say the system is fundamentally broken. The Security Council reflects the power balance of 1945, not today. 5 countries hold veto power, often blocking action on wars, atrocities, and sanctions, leaving the UN paralyzed when it's needed most. So can it still be reformed? Ideas range from expanding the Security Council to limiting veto use in humanitarian crises. But any meaningful change requires approval from the very powers that benefit most from the status quo, which raises the bigger question: is it already too late to reform the international body, or is building an alternative now the only viable path forward?
All right, gentlemen, as always, we begin with a quick fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we'll pick up the conversation from there. Simply put, can the UN be reformed? Ambassador Fitton Brown, please take the lead. Your 30 seconds are on.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. I would say the UN has to be reformed. I don't think there's an option for either the United States withdrawing from it or for abolishing it. And I don't think it would be possible in the present polarized world we live in to recreate something like the United Nations So for all of its imperfections, I think we have no choice but to embark on a determined course of action to reform it.
All right, Dr. Mandel, your take.
Thank you for having me, Ellie. Yes, if it is repurposed with lowered expectations, the question is, can the UN overcome its perception of illegitimacy and whether abandoning institutional bodies makes the world safer or more chaotic? If the Americans withdraw, it increases the influence of our adversaries, the Chinese and Russians. But unless there's reform, ending the politicized committees that like target Israel, the Human Rights Committee, or reforming UNESCO, which delegitimizes the Jewish connection to Israel, it's going to remain a joke.
All right, last but not least, Mr. Curzon, your take.
Thank you. I think it's already been sort of alluded to, but it's not mutually exclusive that we see an end to the international order as it is, and the UN somehow has to go with it. You can have both together occurring. And the UN there is nothing else that could do what the UN does in Afghanistan. Who was left to engage the Taliban when everyone withdrew? Who would oversee such things as the law of the sea? And sure, you can leave it, but that doesn't mean it's not going to still exist with the Chinese and Indians, most of all, influencing it.
All right, gentlemen, let's please feel free to engage in the conversation from this point onwards. So we keep on trash talking the UN quite often. Very easy target, if I may. But maybe it's not necessarily the institution that lost its moral ground, but reality that outgrew it to an extent, Dr. Mandel.
Well, it's a little bit of an anachronism because it, occurred in a time when it was created after World War II by the majority of the nations being democracies. Today, you see 190 plus nations, the vast majority authoritarian, anti-Western, anti-American. Having said that, it does have functioning bodies that are very important of the international institutions. The World Bank is very important, the International Monetary Fund, helping with human disasters. And even when the General Assembly occurs in New York City, besides the traffic that it creates, it gives the chance for leaders to show up and talk behind the scenes with one another where they wouldn't have that opportunity. And look, it just passed the Trump peace plan, so things do get accomplished. But it is a disaster for things like UNIFIL, didn't stop the chemical weapons in Syria, and it ignores most human rights abuses throughout the world in China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and disproportionately focuses on Israel.
But Ambassador Fitton Brown, is it even possible to begin and reform such a big, complicated body at this point in time?
It's really difficult. And of course, I very much agree with what was just said. I thought that was an excellent exposition. We should mention the Secretary General. He's been a particularly bad and ineffective Secretary General. We're about to have a change of Secretary General, and unfortunately, the signs are that the candidates to replace him may not be very much better, although I think they genuinely could not be worse than. In terms of reform, I think that the way that we have to go at this is going to be led by the United States in a budgetary context. It's going to be about freezing money until the UN does what it has started to do, which is to make some quite serious cuts. Now, that's not a great way of designing a body, but it should lead to the lopping off of some particularly unwelcome limbs.
Mr. Curzon, maybe it's just healthy competition in a very American-style way of seeing things. Maybe a new body will invigorate the old one that will simply have to adapt and adjust or else become finally redundant.
The same amount of competition that BRICS is offering it, does it? The border peace is made up of about, 20 to 30 nations, and which of those, other than the United States, really carries any international influence? And that's not to disbar them. They're important. I have been to many of the nations on the list, but unfortunately, they don't carry the same political and strategic weight. And my point is that unless you have greater adoption or admission to the border peace, then it doesn't necessarily give it legitimacy. The reason the UN exists and is relevant is because countries give it agency and legitimacy. And that's probably one of the core emphases of my entire perspective. A country becomes a country, not because it has a bank or a currency or territory. It's because other countries give it that recognition. It's that intrinsic value. And so the Board of Peace certainly can grow, but it also becomes a problem, which is, and then I'll pass back to you with this last point, which is simply that BRICS, we've seen what begins to happen when it becomes bigger. It becomes bloated, you get greater disagreements, and ultimately that's what would happen to the Board of Peace. So none of the issues the UN has right now would suddenly not exist with a bigger Board of Peace. The UN can be reformed, it's just about the political will.
So what, was the dream of global governance always an illusion to an extent?
Yes, I think so. Well, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if that's not very debate of me. Sorry about that.
Can I just offer a quick perspective?
Of course.
One of the things we haven't talked about, for example, is the work that the United Nations does supporting global counterterrorism. And this is only a tiny thing. I don't want to pretend that this justifies all of the bloat or all of the inefficiency and the corruption that exists in the UN. But it's a good example of where you have tasks that are supranational, and each leading nation, whether that's the United States or someone else, struggles to be to hold the ring on it. You then bring in the UN. It creates the kind of consultancy, the kind of advice, and the kind of incentives and indeed imperatives through Security Council resolutions that actually leads globally to a real uplift in international counterterrorism capability. So that's an example of governance where the UN actually hasn't done a bad job.
So, and if I could just tag on to that from the ambassador, like the point about Afghanistan, I think is critical here, because when the US-led coalition withdrew, there was nobody willing to engage the Taliban, because no legitimate country wants to be seen as the first to, well, engage the Taliban, right? Not even the Russians or the Chinese. This is obviously beginning to change now with current circumstances, but the only entity that existed with the reasonable capacity as well was the UN. And you've got 25+ million people, I can't remember the exact population figures, who are in dire need of humanitarian aid and support. And therefore the UN goes in. And I can also say from my experience in Africa, like the UN is really the only body with that global reach. It depends on much funding and of course, again, political will, but Ethiopia, DRC, all of the conflicts that are ongoing in Africa exist. And ironically, the biggest upholders of the idea of the UN Charter are the countries that came out of decolonization, the African states, because they understood and understand that they have to deal with the hand that they've been given, manage the territorial integrity, the sovereignty. And they're some of the staunchest. We've seen the comments from Kenya towards Russia's invasion of Ukraine, for example.
And yet, if I may, it reminds me of this bit by the legendary, brilliant Israeli satire writer, Ephraim Kishon, who had this story about a lion running away from the zoo and then walking into one of the main government offices and eats one clerk, goes to bed. The second day he comes and eats another clerk, goes to bed. The third day, the fourth day he eats the woman who hands out tea, and then in 10 minutes they called police. So no one realized the lion went off, is missing from the zoo, and no one felt those clerks are missing as well. Only when those who actually do things went away, then someone realized there's something. So if the UN institutions per se are gone tomorrow, will we feel the difference?
Well, I just wanted to jump in.
We already do.
Because my world is primarily the Middle East and U.S. relations in the Middle East. And it has been a terrible history of the United Nations in the Middle East. If you look at what's going on in UNIFIL right now, basically in Lebanon, if anything, they've protected Hezbollah. They haven't done their mission. You can go back to 1967 when the UN basically abandoned where they were supposed to be and let the Egyptians close the Straits of Tiran. So you have a situation, we have to ask ourselves, what was the UN's purpose? It was to promote peace after World War II, protect civilians, universal human rights, prevent war, manage conflicts, and coordinate cooperations. And it has done a very bad job about that. So maybe the hybrid that we should have is not the Board of Peace alone, not the UN alone, but maybe we want a coalition of willing democracies and maybe build upon it so there is not an abandonment after a mission is completed. It doesn't have to be the set that we have right now. Keep what's good. I think the IMF, the World Bank, and things that aren't so good, I think they need to be defunded. And really, that's the only currency that the United States has.
Ambassador Fitton-Brown, I can see that you're in agreement here. And maybe this is the zeitgeist to an extent, not the bug, but the feature, so to speak. We see regional blocs, let it be the Arab League or ASEAN, and all those, maybe they sometimes move much faster than the UN. Maybe the world is fragmenting into regions, and it is not performing by reason.
I mean, I think that's a fair point. And regional blocs certainly have their place, but you will always find that they want to work with some kind of international ring holder. And I think this point that our colleague was making about Afghanistan is really important. I'd like to underline that. There are so many orphan issues in the world. If they're not orphan issues, they're supranational, and nobody's willing to sort of take them on as their main responsibility. One moment when I concluded that the United Nations, for all its faults, was really necessary was when Yemen fell into chaos. And a little bit like Afghanistan, nobody really wanted to own it. But you end up with a sort of a combination of the concerned states. Now, that might be in the case of Yemen, that was often the Saudis, the Emiratis, the United States. Yeah. In the case of Afghanistan, it might be the neighboring countries. You might be talking about Tajikistan and China and Pakistan or something of that kind, but always working with some international validation, because the danger with regional blocs can't replace the UN. If you were to replace the UN, you'd have to design something like it. And as I said earlier, in the present polarized world that we have, you could not reach agreement on what that should look like. And the Board of Peace, I think, is not going to succeed in that area. We can already say, of course, that the Security Council played ball with the Board of Peace. It passed the resolution to support the role of the Board of Peace. But the Board of Peace has already moved on to a very different model from what was envisaged at that time, and which, of course, is far beyond what was approved by the Security Council.
And if I can just again add to that, I think that ultimately it's about agency, and the Board of Peace is seen as a bit of a joke by some of the biggest players that are going to be growing. Right, one of the core critiques of issues with the UN is the Security Council. When we talk about the UN, we often talk about just the Security Council, and people who don't work in it or study it don't understand how complex the UN is. And the Security Council is grossly unrepresentative of the international community now. The British and the French are not the powers that they were, and the country Japan
and systemically paralyzed.
Yes, it is paralyzed, and there's nothing you can do to change it, because for you to change the Security Council requires the Security Council. So it's a bit of a ridiculous situation. So ultimately, what I can envisage to an extent is that the UN is more streamlined. I think a simpler, smaller entity that focuses on data collection, administrative elements, humanitarian provision through specific means, working with the African Union, with the Middle East, Arab League, for example, or ASEAN. The UN has been incredibly important for Myanmar. I think this is where it goes. Yeah. But again, it's about political.
Jump in, Ellie?
Dr. Mandel, please. Yes, of course.
Yeah. First of all, I agree about the streamlining and repurposing it, but I think it's unfair to call the Board of Peace what has evolved to, but we're dealing with something that really its primary purpose is regarding the Gaza Executive Board and the Technocratic Board and these and the International Stabilization Force that's going to come. And I have to say, without the American leadership here, you would not have basically a ceasefire now. You would not have all the living hostages back. Israel will not be controlling 59% of the yellow zone. Without American taking the lead here, and whether you call it the border peace or not, I can't call it, I really think it's totally unfair to call it a joke, because it has some real accomplishments here, however you phrase it. The greater idea of a border of peace that has many, that maybe people think is replaced in the UN is a different story.
Right.
But its first mission has gotten off actually much better than expected. What will happen next, I don't know, but certainly anything the UN has done.
Well, I know what will happen next. We're taking a very short break, but when we get back, we dive in deeper into the prospects of this board of peace to actually succeed. And you all, gentlemen, are well versed with what is happening here in the Middle East. And as the first test case, this is also very important. So a very quick break. We'll be right back.
This right here is confidence in a bottle.
It makes me feel so much more confident than I've ever felt.
They are some of the hottest videos on social media. Those videos claiming to instantly get rid of bags under your eyes. Annette Figueroa is here to tell us why she says this one is for real.
This one is for real, and I'm so excited. We even have a video, and all he uses is a small amount on a clean, dry face. And what it does is it tightens and lifts the appearance of bags underneath your eyes. And I did this to my father. We were at home, so we applied it to his under eye bags, and let me tell you, we were so excited. In under 10 minutes, they visibly disappeared from view, and now it is literally part of both of our daily routines. And not only does it work on the bags, it works on the appearance of crow's feet, fine lines, and wrinkles.
At our $14.95 price, it's the best way to try Plexiderm and see it work after your first application. Call the number on your screen.
Call 800-598-5843.
The poverty is unimaginable. There are people who are struggling.
This is where she washes the dishes.
If you're ever going to allow your Christian faith to rise and to do something for God's chosen people, now is the time.
This is the home of Galina. She's 96 years old.
This is what she had to eat for today.
She has one pot with water and wheat.
My father was killed by the Nazis, and I was an orphan. I didn't know about God. But now, in the cold, hungry nights, I pray for food to the God I've never known. There are good people that love you.
You see the tears. Scripture says joy can come in the morning, and you can be the reason.
If you will bless these hurting children of Israel, you will receive God's blessing in return. Your urgent gift today of $25 will help Rush, a survival food box filled with life-saving essentials. If you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives. Call, scan, or go online now.
I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I don't know how much longer she could have waited for us to come.
I can't even grow my food anymore. What will happen to me? I'm doomed to starve.
Tens of thousands of elderly Holocaust survivors in the former Soviet Union are living in extreme poverty, hungry, and forgotten. But through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, we can bring them hope.
Eggs. It's my favorite food. May you be blessed.
You say to them, we see you and we're here to help.
If you call right now, your gift's impact will be doubled to help save lives.
We just finished searching all the car that the people evacuated.
When disaster strikes, there is no time to think. Every second, every move can mean the difference between life and death. At United Hatzalah, that's what we train for. This is a mass casualty incident drill, training for emergency scenarios where the wounded outnumber the available responders. It's not real, but this is where lifesavers are made. For a terror attack, a rocket strike, a natural disaster, or a building collapse. We practice and prepare. Because when it's real, there are no second chances. Please help Unite Atzal continue to be prepared to respond in a moment's notice to any scenario, anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Also still with us, Ambassador Edmund Fitton-Brown, Dr. Eric Mandel, and Mr. Peter Curzon. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for staying with us. So Trump's Board of Peace is selling seats at $1 billion a pop and skipping international law and rewriting it instead. The UN wants the referee is now watching from the stand. So the question isn't really who runs peace now, rather, can peace be run at all? Let's take a listen.
I've always said the United Nations has got tremendous potential, has not used it. But there's tremendous potential in the United Nations. And you have some great people at the United Nations. But so far it hasn't. You know, on the 8 wars that I ended, I never spoke to the United Nations about any of them. And you would think that I should have. You would think they could have done those 8 wars. But they couldn't have, and they tried, I guess, in some of them, but they didn't try hard enough. But there's tremendous potential with the United Nations, and I think the combination of the Board of Peace with the kind of people we have here, coupled with the United Nations, can be, you know, something very, very unique for the world.
All right, gentlemen, we've alluded to that in the previous part, but for the sake of the game, simply put, can the board make peace in the Middle East? Dr. Eric Mandel, a quick fire round, 30 seconds each. Take the lead, please.
I don't know if anybody can make peace in the Middle East because I don't think people want to see what the reality is. Here in the States, people don't realize the threat of jihadism, whether it's the Muslim Brotherhood here. And I don't think people see America's adversaries with open eyes, especially Qatar and some frenemies like Turkey. But I will give the Board of Peace some credit. They did bring on a UN official who's very good. I've met a Bulgarian diplomat, Nikolai Maledev, who is going to head the International Oversight Committee. So what I think basically is, can anybody make peace there? It's lowering the flames. Peace is the wrong word.
All right. Mr. Peter Curzon, your take.
Sure, I think that my fellow colleague has it right, that it's going to be incredibly difficult to see permanent peace in the Middle East, partially because of the arbitrary lines by which the British, French, Russians and others just carved it up. So certainly that's part of the problem. But again, it goes back to what I said before, which is Trump is wrong to say that the UN didn't do anything. The UN can't do anything because it's the nation states that prevent it from doing so. The UN Security Council would love to do things, but the council members prevent it from doing so, and that includes in the Middle East. And I think the Board of Peace is going to be more, it would be better to focus on one issue than try to become the UN as well, because they're just going to dilute each other and undermine each other's missions.
Ambassador Edmund Fitton-Brown, wrap it up for us, the quickfire round, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in pretty much agreement about this, that some good work is being done in relation to Gaza. It's good that we have a ceasefire. And it's a reminder that the United States remains the single most important country in terms of leading the sort of international direction. That's not to say the US is always right, but the US has, I think, also used its position on the Security Council very wisely and has often prevented decisions being taken by the Security Council that would have been taken in the absence or by the General Assembly.
Yeah, so gentlemen, and again, please feel free to engage in the conversation from this point onwards. We tend to illustrate the situation as if France and the UK and Germany refused to join, but the UAE and Pakistan and Hungary signed in as a quote unquote a bad indication. But without them, does the board lose legitimacy or maybe gain freedom from Western meddling that we know is somewhat limiting? Dr. Mandel.
I think the board is about President Trump and his envoys, Witkoff, Kushner, and Marco Rubio, who I worked with some people in his office who I have great respect for. So it almost doesn't matter what the other countries do. It could give some superficial cover, but I think it is all about what President Trump wants to do. And right now, if we're talking about the Middle East, What is he going to do in Iran? All eyes are on there.
So what is it a Mar-a-Lago with a UN logo?
Yes. If I can be. If I can be honest, we've been very cordial up until this point, but now we're going to get slightly different. I think I have very strong criticisms of Donald Trump. I don't want the UN, and I don't think that the border peace should be just led by the US, especially under this administration. He's destroying so many things that have enabled the United States to be the hyperpower that it is, including his own alliance network. I think, again, it goes back to what I said earlier, which is I think the border peace would be better at focusing on one issue, which is what it was first created to be about, Gaza and the Middle East. Bringing it into everything is a problem, and I think it only undermines its own cause. And to be blunt to you earlier in your sort of partial question about the Western powers being not joining, does that affect its legitimacy? Yes, it does. Not because I think that the border peace doesn't have any application potential. Don't get me wrong. I like that Trump is trying to do things. I think that is refreshing. I just don't necessarily think it's the best way he goes about them, and alienating other countries or insulting the British by saying that we did nothing in NATO in Afghanistan is not a way to go about it. So.
Ambassador Fitton-Brown, are we seeing the first, maybe not first, but advanced steps in the attempt to privatize peace? Do big donors make diplomacy faster, easier, or just dirtier?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, and of course, we can't ignore the fact that the private sector and billionaires do increasingly play a role in foreign policy. But I'd like to come back to Gaza again, because I think that last point was really important, and say, I don't think the border of peace is fit for purpose beyond Gaza, but it does have an important role to play in Gaza. And I think where we need to look for the health of the Trump peace plan, and I think the Trump peace plan is really important, it's in the formation of the International Stabilization Force. Right. And that is proving very, very difficult.
Yeah, and no one wants in, simply put. And in this respect, it is important to know that the Board of Peace, it's like the top tier of this franchise, but the two lower tiers are the ones to actually address more directly the situation in Gaza. Dr. Mandel, so what would be the first test, so to speak?
Well, the president has said he has a 2-month deadline for Hamas to disarm, or all hell will break loose. So the International Stabilization Force is not going to do it. Who is going to do it? That means the IDF has to go in and do it. And I just came back from the Middle East, and it's going to take Israel, no matter border of peace or not, at least 9 months to go in and demilitarize and disarm Gaza. And that is because over 70% of the tunnel network is still there.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with a situation that could explode, and the president we see does follow some deadlines. So no matter how good the bureaucracy is in Kiryat Gat, where the Americans are coordinating with CENTCOM and other groups, this could turn very hot and kinetic very quickly.
But gentlemen, we're nearing the end of our discussion. Bottom line, the final test, if the board actually rebuilds Gaza, or at least begins it, while the UN drafts another resolution, will results matter more than legitimacy at this point in time, Ambassador Fitton-Brown?
Oh, yes, I think without a doubt. I mean, this is absolutely all about results. The risk here, the risk of failure, is that what the Board of Peace can do at that level is it can knock heads together at the lower level. It can actually say these things must happen. And I see the real pressure that needs to be applied right now is on Hamas, which has clearly rejected most of the terms of the second phase of the peace plan. And that means pressure on Egypt, pressure on Turkey, and pressure on Qatar. Now, if the Board of Peace does that job and gets those countries to bring Hamas on board, and we then have a meaningful peace process, then nobody's going to care about the constitutionality of the Board of Peace.
Mr. Curzon, your final thoughts?
No, I think it's very aptly put, and it's been a pleasure having our back and forth as we did on this debate, because it's very challenging. But I would say that there is an extent of truth to that, and it makes me think of the expression, better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, in the sense of maybe it is that Trump takes the initiative. They do what is necessary to stabilize Gaza, because the UN has for too long been unable to operate, again, for different reasons. And very much I believe in what the UN represents, but I'm obviously very critical of its format. And ultimately, if the border peace is able to achieve something and we see shifts occurring, then that is ultimately what you need to see occurring in international relations and geopolitics, especially in the Middle East.
Well, you always heard the ones you love, right? Dr. Mandel, maybe bring it back home. Final sentence, briefly, if you may.
Hope for the best, expect for the worst in the Middle East. And I think that is how everybody
You want to get out, but it pulls you back in. This is the American romance with the Middle East. Gentlemen, if I may join the rejoicing of our mutual conversation today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Mr. Edmund Fitton-Brown, Dr. Eric Mandel, Mr. Peter Kurzin, thank you so very much for joining us. Till the next time. Thank you, gentlemen. All right.
Thank you.
Now it is time to shift our focus and put the spotlight on these interesting stories. Thousands lined up at the Tokyo Zoo for one final glimpse, saying ciao ciao to Xiao Xiao and Lei Lei, twin pandas heading back to China, ending more than 50 years of Japan's panda era. What's leaving isn't just the bears, but a symbol of peace between Beijing and Tokyo. Joe Brown, the end of panda diplomacy?
China's panda diplomacy is truly one of a kind. Since the 1940s, they have been lending pandas to countries as a sign of goodwill or for research purposes. And since the 1980s, they weren't gifts, they were leases. So they were still Chinese property, these pandas, and all of their cubs are, as a result, Chinese property. And that means that in case of any diplomatic issues, then they are able to get them back as a form of sanctions and punishment. And that's exactly what's happened in Japan with the two pandas, Xiao Xiao and Lei Lei. Now, this comes as the relatively new Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has come out swinging against Beijing, saying that if there is going to be any invasion of Taiwan, then Japan would likely get involved in a militaristic capacity. And this has angered China. They have engaged in several sanctions, including banning seafood exports and rare minerals to Japan. And they've also urged their citizens not to travel there. There's been a massive reduction of flights from China to Japan, to very close countries. And this is not actually the first time this has happened. In the coastal Japanese town Shirahama, they had 4 pandas up until a couple of years ago, and most of their tourism was based on these pandas. They had panda merchandise. The zoos were filled with people who were queuing up to see the panda sanctuary. But because of a diplomatic issue, the Chinese withdrew the pandas. And now, for the first time since 1972, there are no pandas in Japan. And this goes to show you that the real losers of these kind of diplomatic struggles are not the countries themselves. They are the people, the Japanese children who wanted to see pandas, but now they will never get to have the wonders of feasting their eyes upon the likes of Xiao Xiao and Lei Lei.
All right, so from friendship through pandas to friendship tax, very much included. Trump is threatening 100% tariffs on Canada over its new partnership deal with China, Trader Joe or Trader War. We are now delighted to welcome here in studio Dr. Alex Coleman, economy expert with a capital E. Thank you very much, Dr. Coleman, for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
So is Trump's tariff threat real leverage, or another taco?
Well, I believe that he can apply it, but it's very strange. You know, in game theory, you have win-win games and you have win-lose games.
Right.
Trump only believes in win-lose games. He does not know how to build a friendship with the Canadians, who are basically his best partner. And if you look at the trade balance between the US and Canada, it's very balanced. So it's not like China, where you have so much import from China and very little export to China. It's very balanced. What he's annoyed is the fact that Canada has...
If you're my friend only.
Exactly. He wants He wants.
To be honest, I can relate. Many people.
Monogamy.
No.
But he does not promise monogamy to Canada.
Right. It's a one-sided thing. But in this respect, Carney calls it a partnership. Trump calls it betrayal. But Trump has I will phrase it as a question. Does he have a point? Because also handing Beijing, to an extent, the moral high ground of free trade, that's the downside. But on the other hand, he wants exclusivity in this bipolar world.
The problem, I don't think, is exclusivity. I think he's maybe concerned that there would be tricks by which Chinese products would be shipped into Canada, and they would get some small work made on them, and then they would be exported into the U.S. as Canadian products.
Got it. So it's not about lumber and cars and Canadian whiskey. It's about the chips and nits and bits of
exactly that come from China, get some blessing in Canada, and cross the border as Canadian products.
Got it. So, but we are seeing this trend of America first now means punishing not your rivals but your closest friends.
Exactly, like Europe or
yeah.
I don't understand this. I think he's so much into this bully businessman where it's either my way or no way.
Yeah.
And I don't like this at all.
So where are we going from here? That's a $1 billion, trillion question, and no one really knows. But what are the options?
Well, the deal for Canada with China is fantastic because the Chinese reduced the tariffs and the Canadian reduced the tariffs on electric cars. So it's excellent for them. I don't think that they would give up this deal. They were talking about building like a coalition of medium countries that are not as strong as US and Canada, but I don't see this happening fast enough. So I think it's a real big dilemma for the Canadians. It's a nice deal with China. They will pay a high price with the US.
And for Trump, what's the risk here? No risk.
No risk.
So why not?
Yeah, but you want to build coalitions. You want to build things like like NAFTA, North America.
You want to believe in a world where values and friendships exist, but
I have the heart of a baby. And for that
you
are
a softie. I will give you that. Well, you need to learn from cold-hearted people like me. Yeah, Dr. Alex Coleman. May we unpack developments that again put their money on friendship and values and friendships.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Until then, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. Thank you. To be continued. All right, sharks. They're hungry. We are on the menu. 4 bites in 2 days in Australia, turning the coastline from a summer playground into a panic zone. Are we the victims of the jaws or of our own illusion that the ocean ever belonged to us? Huh? Dr. Aviad Sheinin, marine expert, joining us from the University of Haifa. Of course, when credit is due. Thank you very much, Dr. Sheinin, for joining us. So are these back-to-back attacks proof of more aggressive sharks or just more humans crowding their turf? Once and for all, why do sharks attack us?
I think it's a situation-based attack. It's quite a rare occasion there in Sydney. It doesn't happen a lot at that spot, but there was a lot of rainfall, and the hypothesis is that it's bull sharks, and bull sharks are known to live in also in fresh waters, in streams, and in the places where rivers come to the sea. And due to the murky waters at that spot, the thought is that the 4 attacks that were there at the time had to do with these murky waters.
So it's nature that set up the trap, not the sharks?
Well, obviously, the bull sharks are known to be quite an aggressive shark. They feed almost everything, from turtles to alligators in some areas in Florida, to mammals, to dolphins. So they will bite whatever they can. Obviously, we're not their food. but they'll try.
But if
especially
they'll give it a try. We're not the first order of the menu, but if we're there, they'll give it a try. So officials talk of coals and nets, but do those ever make swimmers safer or just satisfy fear?
In the end, you cannot really net the entire ocean. So when you see a place where there is a murky water, you know that there is the problem or the possibility of encounter a bull shark there or other big sharks that might be aggressive. Better not to go into the water at that spot. All the attacks that were there, one was little, with a boy that was bitten in the leg, and unfortunately didn't manage to stay after this strong injury. But the attack wasn't little in that respect. It was a bite and then left over.
So if panda diplomacy that we talked about short moments ago once soft in politics, can shark diplomacy help humans relearn their place in the ocean?
We have to. We have to. Otherwise, in the end, it's their home.
Yeah.
And we are going into their home, and we have to respect their. I mean, look, it's a big animal, about 3 to 4 meters. They feed on anything. So when we are in the water in a place where they might give a bite, it's a problem. It's something that we have to take into consideration once we're going into a place that we know the sharks are there. And
so it's like on the road. When you drive a small car, you don't pick up a fight with a bus, right? You need to.
More or less, yeah, more or less.
All right. Dr. Aviad Sheinin, thank you very much for helping us better understand our own sense of fear, whether it's justified or not. And the bottom line, yes, it is. We need to be more humble about our position in this universe.
Especially in places where we know when those big top predators are there.
In the supermarket or in the bank, or in the mall, we might take colder shots, but not in the ocean. Not in the ocean. All right, Dr. Sheinin, thank you very much for your time. Israel has chosen its representative for the 2026 Eurovision Song Contest. This year's selection coming against a charged political backdrop. This is quite an understatement. More in this next report.
Israel's Eurovision journey for 2026 officially begins. Israeli singer Noam Betan was selected Tuesday night to represent Israel at the Eurovision Song Contest in Vienna after winning the finale of The Rising Star, the country's national selection show.
קהל יקר, תנו הרבה אהבה לנציג ישראל האירוויזיון באוסטריה, נועם בטן!
Fireworks, confetti, and emotional embraces followed as Noam was crowned the winner, emerging on top in a vote that combined public ballots and judges' scores. The 27-year-old singer-songwriter from Ra'anana, who also holds French citizenship, has stood out throughout the season for his powerful stage presence and vocal range. His Eurovision song has not yet been revealed and is expected to be released in the coming months.
I feel amazing. I've been waiting for this moment for so many years. My message to Europe: get ready. We're coming with light, love, and a song that unites.
Betan addressed the political noise surrounding Israel's participation, choosing to focus on music rather than controversy.
I'm in this world to make music. That's what I was given from God. That's what I'm here to do.
The European Broadcasting Union has confirmed Israel will compete in Eurovision 2026, despite several public broadcasters, including Spain, Ireland, the Netherlands, Slovenia, and Iceland, announcing withdrawals in protest over the Gaza war. Judges and hosts on The Rising Star expressed confidence in Israel's choice.
This year, we're sending the absolute best, and I hope we'll get your heart open and you will fall in love with us again and hug us, because we've been through a lot, and give Noam the spot.
I think that we proved every year that we know how to handle this difficult situation. I think that with Noam, we are even feeling more secure because he's a performer. He knows how to perform. He knows what to do in front of an audience.
Eurovision 2026 marks the contest's 70th anniversary and will take place in Vienna, with Israel once again stepping onto the international stage, determined to let the music speak.
All right, we cannot wrap it up without a breather. Move over. Slow cow stereotype. Veronica's the Michelangelo of the meadow, because this Corinthian cow picked up a broom and turned it into her all-purpose gadget, scratching and styling and showing off serious smarts there. Researchers call it tool use. We call it barnyard brilliance. Look at her, having the time of her life. We knew the next big mind in science would say moo instead of eureka, right? It was written in the stars. Good on you, Veronica, making the best out of it. All right, on that note, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We will see you in exactly a week from now. Same place, same time. Until then, let's hope the world will be blasting with peace and good news. Have a great, bye-bye.